All right, we are going to write a JavaFX program with a label, text field button, and text area. When the user types their name into the text field and then clicks the button, the message hello name is displayed, where name is the text that the user entered in the text field. All right, so in this example, we are going to use Scene Builder to construct our scene, and then I'm going to show you how to incorporate that into your application. So we're going to lay things out just slightly differently than we did before. So what you want to do when you make when you incorporate Scene Builder into your application is you want to put all of your files. We're going to have at least 3 different files, and so you're going to put those in a directory. So when you put those in the directory, what you want to do is give it a name consisting of lowercase letters only. So this is hello name, I'm going to call it. So again, this is going to wind up to be a package name in Java. And so make sure you don't put spaces in here in the package name. Okay, so just write hello name, and then I'm going to go into that directory, and that's where I am going to place all my files. Okay. All right, so first I am going to lay out the scene, and the very first thing that I want to do is go over here under the document panel. Here I've opened up Scene Builder. I've got an empty project. What you want to do is go over here and put the name of your controller class. Let's not let me do that. Maybe I need to drag this anchor pane in here first. Yes. So I want an anchor pane as my root component, so I just drag that into this content window here, and then what I'm going to do is to name my controller class. And so I'm going to put that package name that I just made, hello name, and then dot, and then the name of the class that's going to be my controller class, which I'm going to call hello name controller. Writing is really tiny. Controller. All right, so I have the package name that I chose, hello name dot, and then the name of the class. And I'm going to try and be consistent about the names that I call these classes. So I'm going to call the controller hello name controller. I'm going to call the application, the main class, hello name application. I'm going to call the fxml file hello name fxml. All right, and so make sure you do that. And for this package name, or for this controller name, it has to be the full name, hello name dot, and then the name of the controller. Okay, when you set it like this inside Scene Builder. Okay, so that's the first thing you want to do. Don't forget that. Drag your root component in here, whatever that is, and then set your controller class. All right, so going back to the problem statement, it says that I need a label, text field, button, and text area. So let's start laying those things out. So first up, the label. I'm just going to grab a label and sort of set it up here at the top. And I'm going to call that name. As kind of a prompt to let the user know that's what they need to type in. I am using anchor pane, and so one of the nice things is that I can anchor that that label to the sides of the anchor pane. So I'm going to label it to the left-hand edge and on the top of this anchor pane. All right, next up, I am going to drag the text field and put it right next to the label and make it slightly bigger. And I am going to anchor that text field to the top and left side of the anchor pane. All right, and I'm just going to leave the rest of it alone, but I need to go ahead under the code panel. I need to go ahead and set an FX ID for this. And remember, this has to be a Java, a legitimate Java variable name. All right, so I'm just going to call it text field I'm not going to set the on action for it like I may have done in previous videos. If you set the on action, then if the user has the text field highlighted and they hit the enter, it will trigger an event. But in the statement of the problem, it just says that when the user clicks the button, it really doesn't say anything about the enter field or not. So you can set that if you want to or not. Just to keep this first example as simple as possible, I am going to not set it. All right, next up I need a button. And so I'm going to drag a button over here. Again, I am going to change the text and put something else on the text. I am going to anchor the button to the top and left side. And then I am going to set an FX ID and an on action. Remember, the on action is a legitimate Java method name. So I'm going to have that as handle button. Okay. Next up is a text area. And that text area is going to go down below here. So I'm going to lay that out. All right, and I'm going to give it an FX ID so I can manipulate the text that's inside that box. All right, let's preview this and see how it looks. All right, so you can see it looks pretty good so far, right? One thing though is, if you'll notice when I resize the window, it doesn't resize the text area. The reason why is because I didn't anchor the text area to the edges of the anchor pane. So to fix that, I'd rather have it anchored so you can click these anchors, and I'm going to anchor all sides of that text area down, and then when I preview it, you'll see that now when I resize the window, it resizes the text area because it's anchored to the edges of the anchor pane. All right, so far so good. All right, and so you should see everything down here. Your FX IDs that you set up in this controller panel. All right, so now I am going to save that. Make sure you save it in the correct location. So this is under downloads, and then make sure you save it in hello name. And I'm going to call this, what did I say, hello name fxml. All right, so let's take a look and see. It should show up here. Okay. All right. Then the other thing that you want to do is take a look at the controller. And once you have everything set up the way you wanted to, then what you'll need to do is go down here to show sample controller skeleton, and it'll have it set up for you. You can see it has the package name there already set up for you and everything. Your imports, most of them that you'll need. And then the name is set up in all of the variables there with the fxml tags on there. So you'll just hit copy and go over here and make sure, again, you're in the hello name directory in a new Java, and then copy and paste that right in. All right, and then make sure that you compile it. If you haven't compiled this at least once, when you try to run your program, it's going to error on you. So make sure you compile this. All right, you can see that there is an import that's missing. And that one is going to be import javafx.event.actionEvent. All right, and compile this. Okay, looks good. Okay, so we have that set up. I'm not going to work on this yet. I'm going to make sure that to get the main part of the application set up. So I'm going to make a new class. And then at the very top, right, make sure that you put the package name up there. So it's hello name. That package name is going to correspond to this directory name that you have right here. Okay. All right. So then your imports JavaFX.application.application. JavaFX.stage.stage. JavaFX.scene.scene. All right, and then your class header, public class. I'm going to call this hello name application. That extends application. All right, and since it's a child class of the application class, then we are going to have to implement the start method. Okay, so far so good. Now, when we go through this, we're going to do things. So far, really nothing is very different than what we have started, that we have done before, right? So as I go through this, I'm going to show you the various things that we will do slightly differently. And it basically starts right here. So first thing that I'm going to do is to create the root component like we did before. Here, I'm going to leave it pretty generic, and I'm just going to call it a parent, right? Remember, all containers, that is all nodes that can contain other nodes, including containers, right? They are child classes of parent. And so I'm going to leave that very vague, the most general type that you could have. I'm going to need the import for that. Import JavaFX.scene.parent. All right, and I'll explain why in a second. Okay, and so here in the previous applications that we've done without Scene Builder, what we've done is just directly call the constructor for the for whatever type the root component was. Here, though, when we are using FXML files in Scene Builder, we are going to use a class called FXML Loader. Okay, and inside FXML Loader is a method called load, and that is what we are going to use to load our FXML file into the scene, or into the root component in this case. All right, so it'd be get class, get resource, and then inside there's a string with the name of the XML file. So it is hello name fxml.fxml. Now, if you don't get this name exactly, right, has to be exact, okay, then it's going to cause a lot of issues with your program when you try to run it. And let me see if I can simulate that. Actually, we'll do that in a minute. Okay, so when you then you would sort of go on to do the rest of the things that you normally do, right? We would create a scene with the root component, and then for the width and height, if you go back to Scene Builder, we can see, if you go into this hierarchy panel, anchor pane, you can see that the width and height are 600, 400. So that's one of the things you want to do, is make sure that that matches. what you have in Scene Builder. So 600, 400. Otherwise, it's not going to look right when you open it. It should still open. It's just, you know, you'll have to resize the window and it won't look right. So you want to try and make the width and the height match exactly what is in your root component in here under Scene Builder in the layout panel of the inspector panel. All right, and I mentioned that I'm using parent. The reason why is because fxml loader.load that returns the return type is parent here. Okay, and you can do it. You can do a manual typecast on both sides if you want. Like if you wanted this to be anchor pane, you could put anchor pane here, and then here you would have to manually typecast it like this. So I'm just gonna leave it as the general the unifying type or general type. Okay. All right, so we would create the scene object and then stage.set the scene. And with that new scene that we created, then stage.set title. This is optional, but and then stage.show. All right, that's all you really need. I could put the main method down here if I wanted to, but I guess I'll go ahead and do that. Right, that would be public static void main string args, and then launch args. And remember, really the only reason for that is because, you know, if you want to have arguments, launch arguments when you launch your application, that's how you would do that. Like command line arguments that, you know, modify how your program runs when you launch it, then those command line arguments would get fed into this variable args, and then this launch args is passing it to the application. Okay. So you don't really need that, but that's where you would add it. All right, so now we have everything set up, but this is not going to work, right? There's going to be a couple of issues, at least. Actually, it looks like there's more than that. All right, semicolon expected. Oh, that is an odd one. Was not expecting that. Let me see here. Oh. I forgot an equals here. Sorry. Okay, this is the one that I was expecting, right? You have cannot find this symbol, so you're going to have to import that. So it is javafx.fxml.fxml loader. All right, and then we get this error, right? It says unreported exception IO exception must be caught or declared to be thrown. Okay, so that this load method in the fxml loader class throws this IO exception, and it is a checked exception. So therefore, you must either catch it, right, with a try catch block or declare it with the throws keyword. So just to keep things simple, I am going to just throw it. So up here in the method header for start, I'm going to declare throws IO exception, and that should get rid of that. All right, next up you see we get this cannot find symbol, so we need the import for that. So it's import java.io.io exception. Okay, and so you can see that it compiles. All right, and let's see, it should run, hopefully. And there we go. So we have everything linked up, okay? And it's working okay. So you can see there's nothing that's going to happen, right? Because we haven't worked on our controller yet, but basically everything is looking okay. All right, so let me show you some of the things that can go wrong. So let me try and delete this controller class. I'm going to delete the .class file. All right, and then I'm going to compile it. Everything compiles okay. You can see, boom, I'm getting all of these weird errors, a bunch of them. This is pretty typical for some things that can happen. And that's what they look like. You get a bunch of errors here. All right. So this error, remember I told you when we were copying and pasting the controller over, I compiled it. But if you forget to do that, you're going to get this error. Okay. So if you look, I go back and do hello name controller. You can see that it's going to compile it for me. And then now if I go back to the application class, right, you'll see that it, oops, wrong one, I compiled the wrong one. Here we go, compile the controller. You can see it generates that .class file. Now when I go back and run the application, because the controller class is compiled, you can see that it runs. I don't get those errors that I did before, okay? All right, so that's one of the things that can go wrong. Failing to have your controller class compiled. Here I'm going to mess up the name of the fxml file. And you're going to see that it's going to compile just fine, no problems, right? But when I go to run it, boom, I'm going to get all of these errors right in here. So again, and a lot of times you're going to get, you know, a lot of errors, so it can be a little bit hard to figure out what exactly is causing the issue. Here it's that this fxml file, right, is incorrect. It has to match this exactly. So that's another really common place where you will see people go wrong at the beginning. All right, and so now everything looks good. Okay, so we have our main application up and running. It's linked with the fxml file. Everything looks good. So now what we need to do is just go over into the controller and start fleshing out some of the stuff that we need there. So really the only thing that we need is to work on this handle button method. Remember this, when the user clicks the button in the user interface, it's going to call this handle button method. And so we need this handle button method to do the action that we want. All right. And what we want to do is to change the text area, right? And so what we would do is text area dot set text. All right, now I'm just going to put whatever on there, and then I'm going to compile this. All right, so now when I click the button, it should put whatever in the text area. Okay. All right. So that's how we would set the text into the text area. And so now what we really want, right, is to say hello, and then whatever the user types into that text field. Okay, so I'm just going to use string.format, hello, and then %s for a string, the format specifier for a string. And then what I want to do is, instead of just putting whatever, I want to get the text out of the text field. So the text field, right up here, this variable, it's going to be text field dot get text, like so. All right. And let's see. I'm missing a closed parenthesis on that line. And so that should do it. Okay, so there we go. We have a working application. All right, so that is the basic process. Just to recap, right, what we did was, number one, we put all of this in a package, right? We made a directory for all of these files to go in, using all lowercase on the letter names here, okay? And no spaces either, right? And so that is the package name. We have to remember, right, all of our files, all of our classes need to have the package and that name up at the top, okay? So Hello Application has that package name up at the top. The controller has that name up at the top as well, all right? So that's where those things would go. And the reason why we needed to do that, right, was to be able to set the controller class through this. It has to have the full package name, which is a little bit of a bummer. I'd rather you not have to be able to do that, but that's how it has to be. So over here in the controller, you have to have the package name, then dot, and then the name of the class for the controller, right? The full name. All right. And then once you do that, right, then lay out your scene, how you want it. Make sure you put FX IDs on everything that you want to be able to reference. And then event handlers for things, maybe your text field or your button, wherever you want to put that. And you get that all set up, right, the way you want to. And then don't forget, right, then you would show sample controller skeleton and cut and paste that out. Now, if you don't get it right the first time, you're going to have to go back and alter things. Then, say you write some code for your handler, and then you discover, hey, I messed things up. Then you'll have to go back and, save. You'll have to be careful about how you import that. So it's better to get it perfect right off the bat, so you don't have to keep going back and forth and changing that. And then over here in the application, pretty much follows pretty much the same flow of things. The big difference is that now we are using the FXML loader, right, to load our FXML file and apply it to this scene right here, or to this root component, and incorporating that into the scene. So you can see that's actually a little bit simpler. Notice that before we were cramming everything into one single file, and as you can see, things starting to get more as the program started to get more complicated, there was just too many things going on in that file. And so now you can see this has sort of separated things out. I have more files, right? But this is not very complicated at all, right? And then your controller, right? Things are separated out here. So this stuff, the XML file and the application, right? That's kind of in and of itself, the way it looks. And then what's supposed to happen is incorporated into this separate controller here. So that's a lot easier in the long run. The more complicated things you'll have, programs that you have, they're compartmentalized. So it's easier to maintain that way. Okay. Then a couple other things, right? Make sure this name has to be exact. Okay, that's another catchy thing. If you forget to put some FX IDs in there, that can also trigger a bunch of errors to show up in your program. Okay. All right, so that is it for this one.